Most people are watching the stock market and unemployment numbers, but while everyone's distracted by the headlines, there are 7 warning signs flashing red right now that almost nobody's talking about. I'm Zach. I've been prepping since 2012, and today I'm going to show you the economic indicators that actually matter, the ones that told us trouble was coming in 2008, the ones that predicted Venezuela's collapse, and the ones that are screaming at us right now. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to watch and exactly what to do about it. Before we jump in, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about fear. This is about awareness, because the people who saw 2008 coming weren't lucky. They were paying attention to the right things, and that's what we're doing today. Warning sign number 1. The shadow banking system is now bigger than the regular banking system, and here's what that means for your money. I know what you're thinking. Shadow banking sounds like some conspiracy theory. It's not. It's the official term used by the Federal Reserve and financial regulators around the world. So what is it? Shadow banking is all the lending and credit that happens outside traditional banks, hedge funds, private equity, money market funds. These institutions lend money and create credit just like banks. But here's the critical difference. They don't have the same regulations. They don't have deposit insurance, and they don't have access to emergency funding when things go sideways. Here's the number that should worry you. Shadow banking assets in the United States have reached over $85 trillion. That's more than 2.5 times the size of traditional banks. Think about that. The unregulated part of our financial system is now bigger than the regulated part. So what does this mean for your family? It means the next bank crisis might not start at your local bank branch. It could start in private credit markets you've never heard of. And by the time it hits the evening news, it'll already be spreading to regular banks, your bank. We saw exactly this in 2008. Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers weren't traditional banks. They were operating in this shadow system. And when they collapsed, they nearly took down the entire financial system. Your retirement accounts got hammered, jobs disappeared, home values crashed, all because problems in the shadow banking world spread everywhere else. And it's happening again right now. Private credit default rates hit 5.7% in February 2025. Companies are defaulting on loans from these shadow banks. When enough defaults pile up, those shadow banks start failing, and traditional banks that lent the money start having problems. It's a chain reaction. Here's your takeaway. If you're keeping all of your money in one bank, spread it out. FDIC insurance only covers $250,000 per account. If your bank has heavy exposure to shadow banking, and many do, you want options. This is also why having some cash at home makes sense. Not your life savings, but enough to cover a few weeks of expenses if ATMs go down or banks limit withdrawals like we saw in Cyprus back in 2013.
This is exactly why preppers focus on tangible assets, food, water, supplies, because when financial systems get shaky, the things you can touch and use become more valuable than numbers in a computer. Warning sign number 2, commercial real estate is quietly imploding, and this one's going to hit your local bank hard. Picture this, office buildings sitting empty across America. Right now, office vacancy rates have hit 20.4% nationally. In cities like San Francisco and Austin, over 22% of office space is vacant. That's the highest it's ever been. Higher than after 2008, higher than after the dot-com crash, the highest in recorded history. Now you might be thinking, okay, people work from home now. That makes sense. And you're right, but here's what that means for you. Those empty office buildings are worth a lot less than they used to be. And those buildings were bought with loans from banks, specifically from your local and regional banks. Here's the scary part. Nearly $1 trillion in commercial real estate mortgages are coming due in 2025 alone. Property owners need to either pay off their loans or get new ones, but banks are saying your building is worth less now, so we'll only give you a new loan if you put in a lot more cash. And most property owners don't have that cash. So what happens? The delinquency rate on commercial loans just hit 14.26%. That's a record. More building owners are falling behind on payments than ever before in history. and banks are playing a game called extend and pretend. Instead of foreclosing and taking the loss, they're extending the loans and pretending everything's fine. Here's what this means for your family. Community and regional banks hold over half of all commercial real estate debt. For many smaller banks, these loans make up a huge chunk of their business. According to analysts, 278 banks right now are vulnerable because of commercial real estate exposure. If those loans go bad, those banks fail. Remember Silicon Valley Bank in 2023? That caused a banking panic and people couldn't access their money for days. This commercial real estate situation is potentially bigger because it's not just one bank, it's hundreds of community banks across the country. So here's what you do. Check your bank's financial health, look up their commercial real estate exposure, and don't keep more than the FDIC insured limit in any one account. If your bank is heavily into commercial real estate lending, consider moving some funds. And this is why food storage isn't paranoia. When banks fail, supply chains get disrupted. Trucks stop rolling because financing dries up. Store shelves empty faster than you'd think. Having a 3-month food supply means you're not competing with panicked crowds at the grocery store when everyone else figures it out.
Now, before I continue with the other warning signs, I want to share something that might help you feel more in control, because I know how overwhelming all this economic stuff can feel. Back in 2014, I was watching these same kinds of warning signs start to appear, and I realized my family needed a buffer, not a bunker, just a practical plan. So I put together a free guide that shows you how to build a 90-day food supply starting with just $50. I know that sounds impossible. I thought it was too when I started, but I tested it, I refined it, and I've helped thousands of families do the same thing. This guide includes the exact shopping list with specific brands and prices. It shows you the simple storage trick that works even in a small apartment like I had when I started. And it walks you through emergency meals you can make without electricity or cooking fuel. Because if we do see serious economic problems or bank failures or supply chain breakdowns, food security is going to matter more than almost anything else. The link's in the description below and in the pinned comment. It's completely free. No credit card, no catch. I created it because when I started prepping back in 2012, I made every expensive mistake you can imagine. This guide helps you skip all that and go straight to what actually works. Grab it after this video or right now if you want. Let's keep going. Warning sign number 3. Household debt is at dangerous levels. And it's not just the amount, it's who's drowning and what they're borrowing for. Credit card debt in the United States just hit $1.2 trillion. That's a record. But here's what really concerns me. The number of people who are more than 90 days behind on their credit card payments has more than doubled since early 2022. We're now at delinquency levels we haven't seen since right after the 2008 crash. Think about what that tells you. Credit cards are expensive debt, 20 to 25% interest on average. When people fall behind on credit card payments, they're in serious trouble because credit card payments are usually one of the first things people try to keep current. When delinquencies spike, it means people have run out of options. Here's what this means for you. Your neighbors are struggling more than they let on. People who look fine on the surface are one emergency away from financial disaster. And when enough people hit that wall at the same time, consumer spending crashes. Businesses lay off workers. Unemployment rises. It becomes a downward spiral. But there's something even more concerning. Buy now, pay later services have exploded. Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay. People are splitting grocery orders into 4 payments, splitting DoorDash orders into installments. When you need to finance a grocery order, that's not a budgeting problem, that's an income problem. Wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living. And this debt doesn't always show up on credit reports the same way, so people are taking on more total debt than official numbers show. They think they're okay because they're making minimum payments, but they're on a treadmill that's speeding up. Auto loan delinquencies are rising too, and people prioritize car payments because you need your car to get to work. When auto loan delinquencies tick up, financial stress is spreading.
And here's the kicker. The average car loan is now almost 6 years long. People are stretching payments longer just to afford the monthly bill. Many are underwater, owing more than the car is worth. Here's your takeaway. If you have debt, especially high-interest debt, pay it down as fast as you can. Cut expenses anywhere possible, because when the economy turns, that debt becomes an anchor. You lose flexibility, you lose options. And this is why having stored food is financial preparation too. Every dollar you're not spending at the grocery store during a crisis is a dollar you can use for rent, utilities, or debt payments. Food storage gives you financial breathing room when you need it most. Warning sign number 4. Employment numbers are lying to you. And here's what the real job market looks like. The headline unemployment rate is around 4.4%. That sounds pretty good, but when you dig into the details, there's a very different story, and it affects whether you have a job next year. Here's what most people miss. The unemployment rate only counts people actively looking for work. If you've given up, you disappear from the statistic. Millions of people left the workforce after the pandemic and never came back. They're not counted as unemployed, they're just gone from the numbers. But here's what really concerns me. Job openings have fallen from 12 million during the pandemic to 7.4 million now. That's a massive drop. Companies are pulling back on hiring, and many new jobs are part-time or lower-wage service positions, not the kind that support a family. There's something else. The government significantly overestimated job creation. Annual revisions showed the economy added 900,000 fewer jobs than initially reported. Think about that. Headlines all year said job growth is strong. Those numbers were wrong by a lot, and the corrections come months later when nobody's paying attention.
Major companies are announcing layoffs. Tech companies, banks, retail, manufacturing, it's not one sector, it's across the board. And it's driven by economic uncertainty. Companies see the same warning signs we're talking about. They're cutting costs and preparing. Here's what this means for your job. The job market is weaker than it looks. If you're employed, make yourself valuable, build skills, strengthen relationships, make yourself harder to let go. If you're thinking about changing jobs, be careful. The next year might not be the time for risky moves unless you have a solid cushion. And here's why skills matter for preppers. The most valuable skill in a crisis isn't tactical training. It's being able to provide something people need. Can you fix things? Grow food, preserve food, provide medical help, teach? These skills make you valuable in any economy. In a strong economy, there's side income. In a weak economy, there's survival. This is also why community matters. When jobs disappear, people rely on their network, neighbors helping neighbors, bartering skills and resources. Start building those relationships now, not when you need them. Warning sign number 5. Government debt is consuming budgets. And that means the safety net is thinner than you think. The United States government is spending over 4% of GDP just on interest payments for the national debt. Not paying down debt, not funding programs, just interest. And it's eating up more of the budget every year. Here's why this matters to your family. When the 2008 crisis hit, the government responded with massive stimulus, bailouts, unemployment benefits, programs that kept money flowing. Those programs were possible because debt levels were lower and the government had room to borrow. Fast forward to today, federal debt is over $33 trillion. With higher interest rates, the cost of that debt has exploded. So if another crisis hits, the government's ability to respond is limited. They're already stretched in. What does that mean for you? The safety nets you might expect could be smaller or gone. Unemployment benefits might be harder to get. Food assistance programs might run out of funding. Government services could be reduced right when people need them most. State and local governments face the same pressures. Falling property values mean less tax revenue. Slower consumer spending means less sales tax. Many states have pension obligations they can't afford. The next downturn hits government budgets at every level. Here's your takeaway. Don't count on government help being there when you need it. The cavalry might not come, or it might come too late. This is why personal preparedness matters more than ever.
Having food stored means you're not depending on food stamps or government distributions. Having water filtration means you're not waiting for FEMA trucks. Having medical supplies means you're not at the mercy of overwhelmed emergency rooms. The more self-reliant you are, the less you're affected when systems fail. This is the core of prepping, not because you don't trust people, but because you understand that systems break under pressure, and the people running those systems are dealing with impossible situations. Take care of yourself so you're not adding to the burden.
Warning sign number 6. Trade policy chaos is driving up prices, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. According to the Federal Reserve, trade policy uncertainty has spiked to levels we haven't seen in years, and that directly affects what you pay at the store. Here's what's happening. Tariffs are being imposed on goods from multiple countries, and contrary to what politicians say, tariffs aren't paid by foreign countries. They're paid by companies importing goods, and those companies pass the cost to you. Companies are already reporting increased costs for steel, lumber, electronics, and components. For you as a consumer, this hasn't fully hit yet, but economists expect prices to rise over the next year. And it's coming at a time when people are already financially stretched. But the bigger issue is uncertainty itself. When businesses don't know what trade policy will be next month, they freeze. They don't invest. They don't hire. They wait and see. And when enough businesses do that, economic growth slows. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's what this means for your wallet. Prices for consumer goods are likely to stay high or go higher. Electronics, appliances, building materials, anything imported will cost more. And even domestic products will cost more because the components often come from overseas. So what do? Buy durable goods now before prices rise further. If you need a new appliance or tool, don't wait. Stock up on items you know you'll need. Think long-term purchases. And this is why food storage makes even more financial sense. Food prices are already high. They're likely going higher. Every can you buy today at today's price is money saved versus buying it next year at next year's price. Food storage is inflation protection. You can eat. It's also why learning to garden matters. Even a small garden reduces your dependence on imported food and price swings. A $20 investment in seeds can produce hundreds of dollars worth of vegetables. That's a return no stock market can match. Warning sign number 7. The bond market is flashing recession. And here's what it means in plain English. There's something called the yield curve that economists watch closely. It compares interest rates on short-term government bonds to long-term bonds. Normally, long-term bonds pay higher rates, but sometimes short-term rates become higher than long-term rates. That's called an inverted yield curve. Why does that matter? Because every recession in the past 50 years was preceded by a yield curve inversion. It's one of the most reliable warning signs we have. The yield curve inverted in 2022 and stayed inverted for a long time. Now it's uninverted. It's back to normal. Some people think that's good news. But here's what they miss. The recession usually comes not when the curve inverts, but after it uninverts. The inversion is the warning. The uninversion is often when the recession actually arrives. What's happening is the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates because the economy is weakening. That brings short-term rates down and normalizes the curve. But by then, the damage is already done. Businesses have already pulled back. Consumers have already cut spending. Right now, we're in that phase. The Fed has started cutting rates, the curve has normalized, and recession indicators are elevated across multiple measures. Here's what this means for you. A recession is likely coming. Maybe not next month, but probably within the next year or two. And recessions mean job losses, business failures, and financial stress for millions of families. So what do you do with that information? You prepare now while you still have income. You build your emergency fund, if possible. You reduce debt. You increase your food storage. You make sure your skills are sharp and you're valuable at work. Because once the recession is obvious to everyone, it's too late to prepare. Stores will be crowded, prices will be higher, jobs will be scarce. The time to get ready is when things still look okay on the surface. And this brings me to the most important point. Each of these 7 warning signs on its own might be manageable. But when you have multiple structural problems hitting at the same time, the risk of a cascading failure goes way up. Think of it like a bridge. One weak support beam can be compensated for. But when 7 different beams are all weakened at once, a collapse becomes much more likely. And the trigger might be something small that nobody saw coming. That's exactly what happened in 2008. Everyone knew housing had problems, but nobody expected one investment bank failure to nearly collapse the entire global financial system. The connections weren't visible until it was too late. So here's what you do with all this information. First, understand that preparation isn't about predicting exactly when or how a crisis unfolds. It's about being ready for disruption regardless of the trigger. Back in 2016, I went through an extended unemployment period I didn't see coming. My income dropped to 0 for months. And you know what saved my family? The food we had stored. The emergency fund we built slowly over time. The mindset that we'd be okay because we prepared. We didn't panic. We didn't scramble. We just lived off our preps until I found work again. Second, focus on the basics. Food security is number 1. Water is number 2. A financial cushion if possible. Skills that are valuable in any economy. Strong relationships with neighbors and community. These things matter whether we face a collapse, a recession, or just continued uncertainty. Third, don't let this information paralyze you. I watch these indicators because it helps me make better decisions. Do I take on new debt right now? No. Do I make sure my family has food stored? Absolutely. Do I work on being more valuable at my job? Yes. Knowledge enables action. Ignorance leaves you reactive.
Start small. This week, add an extra $20 to your grocery budget and buy shelf-stable food. Rice, beans, canned goods. Next week, do it again. In 3 months, you'll have a solid foundation. In 6 months, you'll sleep better at night knowing your family can eat no matter what happens to your job or the economy. Learn one new skill. Start a small garden. Learn to preserve food. Learn basic first aid. Learn to fix things. Every skill you gain is an asset that can't be repossessed or inflated away. Build community. Talk to your neighbors. Find out who has skills you don't. Offer to help with things you're good at. When things get difficult, your network is more valuable than your net worth. And finally, remember that most people who've lived through real economic hardship didn't see it coming. They thought it wouldn't happen to them. But economic systems have a way of looking fine right until they don't. Slowly at first, then all at once. The warning signs are flashing. What you do with that information is up to you. But I'll tell you this, the families who prepare don't regret it. Even if nothing major happens, they've built resilience. They've gained skills, they've strengthened relationships, and they sleep better knowing they're ready. If you haven't grabbed that free guide yet on building a 90-day food supply with $50, the link's right below. No cost, no catch. Just practical steps you can start this week. Because whether we see a major economic crisis or just continued turbulence, having food security brings peace of mind that no stock portfolio can match. This guide has helped thousands of families get started. The exact $50 shopping list, the storage methods that work in any space, the meals you can make without power. Everything I wish someone had handed me back in 2012 when I was making every expensive mistake in the book. Stay calm, stay steady, and remember that preparedness isn't about fear. It's about taking responsibility for the people who count on you. It's about not being a burden on others when systems fail. It's about having options when everyone else is out of options. If you found this valuable, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, click the like button so more people see this information, and drop a comment letting me know which warning sign concerned you most or what you're doing to prepare. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.